Hi there, welcome to this build of a 45-inch wingspan Quiver. Now the Quiver is a scaled down version of the iconic 1930s vintage plane, the Quaker. And we're building this from a great set of plans that we've downloaded from the OuterZone website. And if you have a look in the description below this video, there will be a link there to the plans and they're free to download. Now up till this point we've been building the fuselage, and as you can see we've got it in quite an advanced state. It's almost there, it's almost finished, and we're almost ready to move on to the wings and the tailplane and the fin. But there's one major job that we still have left to do. In the last video, when we pulled the sides together, we made sure that we'd got the slots or the holes in the the firewall and this former here to allow the engine mounts to slide in. But it's not quite that simple, because the engine that we're fitting into this is a Mills 1950s 1.3 Mills diesel engine, and the engine bearers are slightly wider than shown on the plans, and that creates us a little bit of an issue that we just need to get around. And we'll take a closer look at the plans and I'll explain exactly what we need to do and why. We can see the plan view of the fuselage here, and we can see the engine bearers come through to the tip of the nose, and they just fit in like that, and they butt up against the side of the cheeks of the fuselage here. Now the problem we have is that our engine, our lovely 1.3 mils, is slightly wider than those engine bearers. They're actually 26 mil wide. So if we widen these out, that comes to like that. And we can see that that is actually very slightly beyond or on the edge of these cheeks here. So what we're going to do is we are going to just take off a little bit of the timber here to allow them to still fit within the fuselage and retaining those cheeks. So we'll just take off a little bit off each one, and that will then allow the engine to sit in nicely and the cheeks to sit in without, which they're doing at the moment if we put them in, pushing out the cheeks on the fuselage. And if we bring the cheeks or the fuselage in, you can see that we can get this in at the moment, but the only way we can do it is by pushing out that cheek to get it in. So we're just going to shave off a little bit on that outside edge, and then we can fit our engine nicely into this. Once we've got that done, what we're then going to do is we're going to build up this nose section here. But you can see on the plans here, it's the nose section follows the line of the front of the fuselage up there. But we've got a slight problem in the fact that the engine and the venturi for this goes quite a way back. So we want to make sure that we've got enough access for the needle valve here, but also to be able to get a nozzle in to fill up the fuel tank. So it's going to take a little bit of cutting and sanding and shaping to get that just right, while still retaining this lovely sort of Quaker look to the nose. Right, well, I've got one of these beach bearers marked up. I've just used the plan to mark what I think needs to come off. Now, because this is beach, 1/4 inch by 3/8, it's quite hard. Sanding it is going to be quite a bit of effort, hand sanding it. I don't really want to cut it, so, and I always like an excuse to use one of my late father's old planes. This is a lovely plane. You can see by the box it's had a fair bit of usage, but it's a lovely plane for doing this kind of work. So we just need to take off a slither or a few slithers, and this is lovely and sharp. Just careful not to take off too much. Just a little bit more, I think. And I think it's better to take off a bit, try it a bit more, try it until we get it just right, rather than taking too much off, because it'd be nice if this bearer just touched the side without a gap, so that it can be glued to the side of the cheek. It'll just be a little bit stronger that way. Now we can see here, I don't know where that shows up, but I've taken a little bit too much off there and I need to take a little bit more off there. Or I haven't taken off too much, but it's got a gap there, so it needs to come off just a little bit further back. And what I can do now is just mark that up where it needs to come off. Right, we've now got these in place and we've got some timber chamfered off. You can see I haven't taken off as much as I originally marked up. I just took a little bit at a time, and this seems to be the best fit. Now I've brought these just to the edge here, and then I'll probably make up this point with a little bit of balsa just on the end there, but we'll come to that, just cosmetics really. Now you can see there's a lot more off this one than this one. That's because built into the design is 2.5 degrees of right thrust, so those engine bearers are over to the right hand side of the fuselage. And we can see that if we just get this mills, we can just drop that in there, and actually wants to go a little bit further forward. There we go, that is perfectly mounted there. And I think what we will do is we'll get these glued in and then we'll drill the mounting holes. I'm kind of tempted to do the mounting holes now, but I think it would be better if we glue them in place first. And I'm going to put a piece of balsa in between here just to make sure that those are kept at the right distance apart, because at the moment there's a little bit of movement in it, and I want to make sure that they're not too tight. But that looks quite nice. And if I turn this round to the side, we can see that the cowl now can come back up here and over the top, as long as we just bring it around enough for this hole in this needle valve. So what I think I'll do now is I will get these engine bearers glued in place. In actual fact, I need to just trim off the excess, because there's timber there that we don't need. I did them longer than necessary just until I'd got it sorted. So I will get those glued in, and I'm going to be gluing that in with 30-minute epoxy. Right, well, I've now got the engine bearers glued in with 30-minute epoxy. I've got my spacer, keeping them exactly 26mm apart, and I've got clamps just making sure that they glue nice and tight against these cheeks. And I've got a little bit of balsa on there just so these don't dig in and leave a mark we have to sand out. But that's 30-minute epoxy, so we'll leave that now, and once that's cured we can have a look at getting the engine mounted. And there we have our holes. So let's see how this fits with the engine. There we go, brilliant. That fits lovely. When I bolt this in, I mean the bolts are just pushed through at the moment. When I bolt this in finally, I will probably have a big strengthening washer that goes right across the lugs from front to back and incorporates both the bolts, just to give some strength to that, because I'd hate to for this engine to get damaged. But that's looking great, and now it's time to start thinking about the cowl. Right, well, I've made a start on a bit of a cowl, and if we take the engine out and then get on with the cowl first. And what I've done is I've got a piece of balsa which is, I think, is it 3/8, and it's really soft balsa with a couple of pieces on the side there, and I'm hoping to give a little bit of clearance for the Venturi so that can sit over the top like that, and that will sit on there. And I've marked on an angle that we need to cut for the front of this. I mean, I'll cut it slightly long and then sand it to fit, and obviously I need to do the sides, create the actual curved profile of the nose. And once we've got that block, we can then put the engine back in place, and we can see what needs to be cut out in this center section to allow this to be glued in place, fitted permanently, but still get the engine in and still have that access to the fuel filler and the needle valve. Right, we've now got the first stage of this done. I've just cut this roughly to profile so it fits on there. I'm not going to touch the sides or the top now, because I will profile those once they're once it's glued in place, and you can see how that will give that lovely Quaker look. Now, if we fit the engine, just slot it in place, just a couple of the bolts so we get it just located in the right spot. Now we can see that that almost fits with the needle valve, just a little bit close. So I think what we need to do now is we obviously need to cut this back, sand this back here, or cut it back. What I don't want to do is touch these sides, because I don't want to lose that Quaker profile. I'm quite happy to cut it back in the middle, but our fuel filler is quite a way in there. So I think what I'm going to do is, first of all, I will bring this back at about that kind of, like that, round about there, and there we go, something like that, and see if we can get that fuel nozzle in there to fill the tank. So we'll just bring that back like that, I think. So we'll have a look, I'll have a play around, and we'll see if we can get this to fit. Right, well, I think we're almost there now with this. You can see we've got the profile. Once it's all sanded in, we've got the engine in, we've got access to the needle valve, and the filler is still a little bit way down there, but I think we're at a point where we should get this cowl glued, get this cowl glued on, and then we can sand it and really make it fit. If you're wondering about how we can get to the Venturi to choke it, well, there is always access underneath there, and you can get your finger up holding the model and just put your finger over that. My finger's over it now to just to choke it. To get the engine in and out, we'll have to take the bolts out first, because we can't lift that out because of the Venturi. But that's neither here nor there really. So I'm going to get that glued in now, and then profile the top, and then I can work a little bit more just on this area to make sure that we can get that fuel filler nozzle in there and the tank filled. I mean, to be honest, we could get a little bit of hose in there if we wanted, with a little bit of pipe on. I mean, it will do at that point, but we'll see what it looks like when we've got it cleaned up. Right, well, I'm really pleased to say I think we have this cowl finished, or at least finished except for the final sanding, which it'll obviously need. Just neatening up and smoothing out a little bit, but to be honest, the shaping in that and the gross sanding is done, and I'm really pleased. We've still got that lovely Quaker look on the front, and yet we've got this bigger engine that will fit in there now, and that will just slot in there. We can drop a couple of bolts in. I'm always really nervous when doing work like this, because the last thing I want to do is bring my sanding sticks, which I'm profiling this with, into contact with my engine, because I'm just always concerned a little bit of grit from the sandpaper or the garnet paper will get too close to the engine, and if it gets in the engine, then you know we really do have a problem. Anyway, we can see there, look how lovely that looks. That is brilliant. I am really pleased with that, and I always knew it was going to be a little bit of a squeeze to get it in, but I think we've done that admirably, and we can get to that fuel hole there. I don't know whether that shows up on the camera, I think it probably does, but we can get to that really easily now, and I think that looks lovely. Well, I've really enjoyed getting the nose and the finished and the engine mounted in this Quiver. I mean, the whole character, I think, of the Quaker and the Quiver is wrapped up around the shape of this nose, and getting it right, particularly as we've got a slightly larger engine we had to fit in, was paramount, and I am really pleased with how that's looking. And now essentially this fuselage is more or less finished. We've obviously got to fit in the radio gear way down the line, and we've got the windscreen and this top piece to finish. But I'm going to be doing the windscreen once we've got the wings fitted and we know how the wings are going to sit on here, and then we can think about that. But for now, I think that we can call this fuselage more or less finished, and like I say, I am really pleased with the look of that. Anyway, I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and I think in the next video we're going to start something different. We're going to be getting on with either the wings or the tailplane and the fin and rudder, and that's going to be really exciting. Nice to have a little bit of a change and to have got this fuselage sorted. So anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you found it interesting, useful, and please come back and see how we get on building this lovely 45-inch wingspan Quiver.